number one, if you look at a comparison of where we stand in our property tax system compared to other states, we are just darn right in the middle of the pack with regard to property tax. Nobody likes paying it, especially if you don't escrow it, because you write out big checks twice a year, and it is just painful for folks. And so they don't like it, and I appreciate it. I don't like it either. But if you look at it in terms of a comparative burden, we are in the middle of the pack, and so I would not propose, if I were starting from scratch, to do property tax relief. I'd say we are where we are. Then we do have this program for people who have issues, like it's called a circuit breaker program. If you're a senior and you're living on a fixed income and the value of your property's gone up, then we have programs whereby you get some relief. And so right now, it's my belief those programs are robust and they are serving the need. But if we do need to do anything in the property tax area, I'd be for doing something there. So right there, I'd say now we're at 0. I don't know if that's really true because I haven't seen that exact calculation, but that was just kind of how I thought about it. Now the other thing is I have said for quite some time that I trust the report that Governor Pawlenty, when he did that 21st Century Tax Commission, he assigned economists and people from this party and that party all to come together and evaluate, how would you grow Minnesota if you were starting from scratch in terms of both a stable revenue stream and poised for growth. And so this group of people came forward with this report that said, number one, we are too reliant on the income tax. And so we've got to be careful because with an aging population, that's a problem, that reliance on the income tax. And we're an outlier when you compare us to other states. We're at the higher end. In addition, our sales tax, and everybody, you've talked to tax specialists, no matter, again, whether they're a corporate person or a state tax analyze, how do you say that? Analyst, thank you. or they're doing it for my husband's firm. They all talk about the most stable tax is the broadest consumption tax. And so sales taxes are very positive source of revenue that aren't near as lack the unstable nature of the income tax, and then actually property tax is the most stable at all, but we don't really want to increase property taxes. So all of those folks who got together and looked at this problem said we have got to increase what we tax from a sales tax perspective in Minnesota, because what we tax is way more narrow compared to most states. And so, we don't tax clothing, we don't tax food. Now, I'm not saying we should tax food, but it's not, there's many things that we exempt. We don't tax really any services, many things. And so their recommendation was to have a more stable tax system. You should lower the business taxes because this report did not tackle the income tax. It left that pretty much alone, but it said you should lower some of those business taxes that make us not competitive, like the business property tax in particular is a tough one. And the corporate tax, while it looks high compared to other states, big corporations find a way to pay a much less rate. It's called the net rate, net effective rate. But, some of those mid-sized companies actually pay the higher rate. And so to make us more competitively poised for growth, they said, lower some of those business taxes and broaden the base of the sales tax. And so that's what I've been advocating for. Now, the clothing tax, so Ann Rest, she's head of the Tax Reform Committee, she put forward a couple different ways to do the clothing tax. I've come to now favor a third way, which I haven't yet figured out to do, but one way that she put forward was, okay, if you're worried about it being regressive, say anything over $200, do that. That's not really, and then the governor did $100. As I've heard from people, it's not really the best approach because then you get retailers who say it's not really a level playing field. It's not fair if my cost structure is I have more $150 items or a high-end mall compared to a moderate price. You're really pitting retailers against each other and you're driving behavior with that tax policy. You're actually having consumers pick this store over that store because of tax policy. And a tax analyst once told me you don't want your tax policy to be in such a way that it actually changes behavior, you know, unless you're really clear that's what you're trying to do. And I don't think we're trying to give anybody a windfall in terms of being a, you know, a retailer. So I backed away from that idea. And then another approach that Senator Rest had was to say, okay, tax everything, but then do a credit for low income. And that's an approach that many states have done. The one concern about that approach is that Mall of America in particular has been really clamoring about it would be disadvantageous to them in terms of their tourism business. They say people come from all over the country to buy clothes at the Mall of America, and that because of our tax. I'm not sure I believe it, but that's what they say. I'm like, not sure. So then I've been just trying to think creatively. Okay, how could you do this in a way that kind of addresses all of it? And so I brought this to Ann Rest today, and she told me it's not possible, but I'm not going to give up yet. And that is, I said, what if you tax all clothing, but you do it at 3%, and nobody else is at 3%, and so you'd actually still be better than all your neighboring states, and you'd have much more taxable, you know, goods, and there would be level playing field. So you like that idea? So the reason why she says it didn't work is because there's something called the streamlined sales tax law, which is a federal law, which says you can't favor one good over another with tax pricing. So she said, but there's an exception for cars or something. So I said, well, we have to find a way. So I don't have the answer to that, but that's, I share the story with you because I want you to understand what I'm thinking. I'm trying to look at it from the long-term perspective. How can we position Minnesota for growth and take into account the different nuances that make our state special? And so I think it's important to listen to folks and to take what they say into account and then be creative to try and come up with solutions to some of the challenges. And so that's why I write you those long updates for those of you who get mine, because I really want to tell you the way I see it so that then you can come back to me and say, well, I don't see it that way. I think you should consider it this way or that way. And one of the things I'm most excited about this session is that we've added the survey to these updates, and I've been shocked by the amount of people who fill out the survey and how invaluable that feedback is. So that's very nice. So that was a very broad brushed discussion around the budget, and rather than go into a different topic, I'd like to open up this time for comments on these budget proposals and thoughts you had, and then after that, then we'll move to a couple of the other issue areas. One would be the healthcare exchange, because that's moving through at a fast pace, and I know people are concerned about that, and also some of the things that the governor's proposed with regard to education. I'll touch on that and then leave it wide open. So budget, who's got thoughts, comments on the budget discussion? Yes.
Terry, you know, we've talked about this for a long time. The $3 billion that are in the tax expenditure document,
yep,
are included as expenditures.
Right.
They are sales taxes.
Yep.
$3 billion. It's about
and
that.
exemptions.
Yes.
Yep.
So your discussion about if I increase the sales tax.
Base of it. Yep.
Yeah, you know, almost every state I've ever lived in has a sales tax on food and clothing.
Yep.
And you can argue about what the level ought to be.
Right.
And we know that it's regressive.
Yes.
Relative to a progressive income tax. But is there a way to think about it like